Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Timeless. So in this episode, we have the team going back to 1969, dealing with the moon landing because Flynn has kind of screwed that up. It's kind of sad because, like, you see Flynn and Anthony meet with one of the guys that was kind of behind it, kind of working at NASA, kind of working behind the scenes, kind of make sure that Neil and Buzz kind of got back home safely and sound, just kind of, helped, basically change history, essentially. Got to know him a little bit, got to talk to him about the defense and stuff like that, went back in time and killed him. I don't know, it sucked like that. It's like, you obviously see Anthony a little bothered by it, but it's kind of sad. It's just, like, you see Flynn not really being okay with it either. It's just kind of like, it's part of the thing. It's like, we have to change history. So we have to change things. They essentially, Anthony ends up uploading a virus. It's a modern day virus, and with the technology back then, they're not prepared for something like that. They don't even know that viruses exist. So it's up to Rufus to kind of fix the situation, and to fix it, he has to call upon this lady named Katherine Johnson, who's basically, essentially, Rufus kind of makes it seem like, obviously, she played a pivotal role in a lot of stuff going into the future, but it's like, more so than anything, it's just kind of like, hey, she's a very smart lady. She's actually one of the smartest people in the building, but it's just because it's like, she doesn't get that much recognition. She's kind of a number pusher, basically. She works in the basement. Rufus is one of the few people that recognizes her for being, like, the extremely smart person that she is. He even kind of throws out some formulas and stuff like that to make her go realize, like, oh, like, he's not just talking out of his ass. He might be a quote-unquote janitor, but he knows what he's talking about. That basically her and him are kind of the only hope of getting astronauts home. And I even love some of the conversations just being like, she's like, yeah, all these computers in here, all this system holds a whole 2 megabytes. And he's like, megabytes, or a whole 2 megabytes. Wow. Ooh, that's amazing. It's just like, it's so interesting because you get to see that perspective. You never really think about just how vast, like, technology has gone in leaps and bounds, even though that was like, what, I don't want to do math, 60 years ago, let's put it like that, right? 50, 60 some years ago, blah, blah, blah. I'm not about to do the math in my head. That's just still, the fact is of technology reaching that point where it's like, oh, like 2 megabytes back then was something to be amazed about. And that's government having that, because usually the government has access to more, a lot of stuff kind of gets thrown out there because it's like the government testing stuff out, but it's like, obviously government will have a little more access to the more top rated stuff, better quality stuff. So it's like, if they're running at 2 megabytes back then, and now you have like terabytes, computers that can hold terabytes of information and stuff like that. I mean, gigabytes at the very least, gigabytes. So it's just astounding when you think about that. And luckily, they were able to kind of eventually kind of run things through. Because when you actually break it down in this episode, there was not that many. I mean, granted, what was the guy named that died? It was Wayne, I think. Like, other than him dying, like, actually, he wasn't the only one that died, because there was a plumber dude that died too. So, minimal casualties. Because at the end of it all, history wasn't changed drastically. It is kind of interesting because there was the whole part of this episode is about Anthony. We learned some things about him. For instance, we find out that the first time the lifeboat was kind of being tested, he was aborted, and it was basically an accident. They were able to get Anthony back, but something changed in him after that, because basically he was hospitalized for like the next 7 months, and Rufus was there kind of being by his side. Because to him, Rufus even said, it's like, Anthony's just not like a colleague, a mentor. He's like a friend. He thinks of him as like a brother. And for him, it's like, he sees all this stuff. Because if Anthony works alongside Flynn, it means like, hey, like, it means that he's just as culpable for everything that Flynn does. It's like, he's responsible because he doesn't stop Flynn when he has the opportunity to. There's even points in the episode where he underestimates Rufus. He's kind of like, oh, you don't have to worry about Rufus stopping this, because he can't, because he won't be able to, because, he doesn't have access to the technology needed to stop this in this era and in this time period. And he's like basically saying Rufus will crack under pressure. He doesn't work well under pressure. He can't stop this, which he does because he works with Catherine, obviously. But it's also because, like, I brought it, like, he underestimates Rufus, because the thing is, he thinks he knows Rufus. The Rufus before him isn't the same Rufus that he knew, like, at the beginning of the series before he left. Rufus has been through a lot. He's experienced a lot. He's changed. He's grown as a person. He has Wyatt and Lucy there, so it's more reason to it's a little more upfront because it's like there's no more secrets between him and Lucy, and it's like he realizes like there's this big battle, there's this big war raging, and he's got his own part to play in it and stuff. Especially when he's kind of being hostage in the middle of it, you know, kind of being Rittenhouse as errand boy essentially. So it's kind of like you get to see he's not the same person. So when it came down to it, like, Anthony was kind of like, oh, you got the gun on me, Rufus, but that doesn't mean you're actually going to shoot me. And the other guy's about to reach for his gun, and Rufus like shoots him down easily, which kind of terrifies Anthony, which Anthony runs away. But it's kind of like, the fact is, it's kind of proof that like he doesn't know Rufus, because the fact is he hasn't experienced the same thing Rufus has, which Anthony kind of explains everything as being like, it's like the fact of the matter is Rittenhouse is the enemy. It's like you don't know what they will do with a time machine, and then you have Lucy being like, well, what would they do? I mean, from what we know, Rittenhouse has existed since like the formation of the country. So it's like, I guess for them, it's like going back even further, like getting access to other people in the past, getting Rittenhouse deep seated in every bit of society, going back to Roman times, for example, and like instigating certain events to kind of play out a certain way to get certain people to rule in power. So say, for instance, they get someone back in Roman times to become part of Rittenhouse, kind of start the generation there. Then they'll have access to it all the way back then. They kill the right people with their future knowledge to be able to make things play out a certain way and just make history kind of bend to their will. It seems like they're kind of doing that kind of behind the scenes, but the fact is they're not as powerful as they could be. Like, they're still very powerful, but you know, that's the situation with everyone. People with power tend to want more power, and a situation of like they want to create, I guess I can only chalk it up to want to create a world where they have complete control, or they kind of they have complete access over everything. So, and like I said, it's kind of a shame because there's a point later on in the episode where Rufus is kind of like, the fact of the matter is he's kind of worried about what's happening to him, because it's like he's becoming numb. He's like, when he shot that dude, he should be worried. He should be concerned about it. He should be a little uneasy, but he's like, I felt nothing. He's like, part of me is like, I could probably do it again. I could probably kill Anthony and it not feel anything. It's like, what's wrong with me? I guess it's just kind of like, it's just that mentality of kind of like the one versus the many. I guess it's because it's kind of like you're kind of experiencing something. You know, I guess you could look at it as a form of maybe PTSD, in a sense of just kind of like that part of you is kind of becoming numb because of the fact is that it's like, you know, it's for the greater good, so the ends justify the means. So that's why those lives don't necessarily matter, because it's the one life versus the many. It's like if you take out Anthony, you won't have anyone there to drive the lifeboat for Flynn. And speaking of Flynn in this episode, a very interesting thing was him meeting with that Maria woman. It's because, like, okay, that Maria is obviously a target, but something was different. Because normally when he comes across a target, someone he needs to eliminate, outright kills him. But it's like he spent this entire time getting to know her, hang out with her or something. It's like, is he interested in her or something else? Like, it crossed my mind, like, I'll get to it in a second, but nevertheless, it's like, he's getting all close to her and everything. I was like, okay, this is weird. Like, is he getting close to her so he can wipe her out? But it's like I said, normally he'd get close to him to a certain extent, but this is like a little overboard because he's opening up to her, asking her, having her open up to him, and he's opening up to her, talking about the fact that he lost his wife and his child. And then she talks about the fact that it's like, hey, if she lost her son, she'd go through hell and back to get him back, to make the people that took him away from her pay. And he's like, I'm glad you said that, because it kind of reassured him. And I was like, so I chalked it up as like, oh, is there kind of like a romantic thing here? It's like, did you just kind of like grow a conscience or something like that? But it's like, no, this woman was actually his mom, and the boy he ended up saving because he was allergic to a bee sting, and ended up giving medicine to save him. And it's like, oh, that boy Gabriel was his half brother. Because at first I was like, Gabriel, I was like, oh, is it actually Garcian? And he just ended up changing his name a little bit or something, like maybe it was some kind of nickname or something. And it's like, no, it's just that was his half brother, because essentially his brother, I would assume, died there, but because Flynn went back and changed it, his brother's alive and well in present day, which pisses Lucy off, because Lucy's like, what the hell? He gets to go back in time and save his half brother, like, willy-nilly. But I'm here trying to get my sister back. You have Wyatt wanting to save his wife, but we can't. It's like, where's the justice in that? It's like, you promised you give me my sister back, and the Homeland Security lady is kind of like, we will, just after we stop Flynn, which is kind of like, to me, I chalked that up as to like, yeah, we're probably not going to keep that promise. That's how I'm looking at it. And maybe that'll eventually be how Lucy looks at it too, because it's like, why, like, because it's like, in total situation, I'm very curious to see like how, like, because we've gotten bits and pieces of Lucy's personal life, like the whole having a fiance, her mom being okay in this world, finding out about her dad. It's like, obviously it seems like Lucy's life is the most connected to this because obviously she is connected to Rittenhouse in this way, the journal, her dad, stuff like that. So it's kind of like, obviously she's a big connection to it. So I'm guessing that's why, of everyone, we kind of learn more about her life. I mean, granted, we know everyone else's life. We pick up stuff here and there, but it's like more so the focus is her life because her life is kind of a key point to everything. It's like everything's connected. What I find very interesting, because it kind of brought up in this episode, is like the whole last episode where they got stranded, hence the actual name of the episode, Stranded, back in 1754. Like, Anthony and Garcia were like, okay, how the hell are they here? I thought they were supposed to be stuck there, which makes me wonder, now I'm thinking about it, because I brought it up last episode. It's like, oh, the reason why they stranded in there is because that's what Lucy wrote in her journal. So the question is, I'm wondering is, does that mean that, did he follow the book? Did he go, okay, so they get stranded in 1754. Okay, let's strand them in 1754. And it backfired because the journal didn't inform him that, like, hey, we actually got out of 1754 and ended up tracking him down. So maybe there's certain, obviously, because not everything is filled in, because there's certain details for Flynn that isn't filled in that he kind of has to fill in for himself. So maybe there's certain things that Lucy left blank because for her, those moments were blank for Flynn as well. Like, maybe she purposely didn't write everything down because she didn't want to give him a full advantage. She wanted to give her past self a chance to fight him and kind of change everything, in the cycle of time and everything. That, or legitimately that was Flynn going off book and trying to strand them somewhere, but it kind of backfired. To me, I like to think it was more than that. I like to think it was part of the journal, but like I said, it could easily just be like, hey, strand them in a different time period so we don't have to worry about them coming after us anymore. So, like I said, this episode just kind of shows you a little bit more that, like, the reason why Flynn is doing certain things is because family means so much to him. Like, that he is legitimately doing this for possibly right reason. Like I said, the big overall theme of this show is kind of like, do the ends justify the means? If you're taking out such a dangerous group as Rittenhouse, which is like, why are they so dangerous? I mean, you see what they can do when they try to intimidate just Rufus to do the things they want to. It's like, what if they had that power to do it to a lot of people, push a lot of people to do stuff for them, just because it's like, for them, it's like, oh, this is for the greater good. I mean, who knows if that's even their main purpose? It's like, is there like a reason to be like, hey, like, this is the main reason why we do what we do? Because I'm sitting here thinking about, the episode where they met the lady who actually used to be part of Rittenhouse. She explained that, like, hey, it's the episode where everything came out. I'm curious, like, will they kind of run into her present day? Because I'm curious to see, like, how certain actions they take in the past, like, how will, like, will there be moments where they come across that in the present as well? Like, if you take, for example, Catherine in this episode, she kind of heard the whole conversation about time travel, but she really didn't understand it and whatnot. So, but it makes you wonder, like, I mean, she might not be alive in present day, so it does make you wonder, like, if she was, though, would she be able to have that conversation, like, oh, I remember you guys, like, oh, you're so young, it was just like I met you just yesterday, like, you look just like I met you, like when I met you back in 1969. So, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting that hasn't really come up yet. Obviously, we've seen one experience of it, and that was the Rittenhouse dude that talks to Rufus, that's like, oh yeah, I'm the one that you talk to. So that's the only example we've really kind of seen of that. Obviously, we've seen the history aspect of things change, but like the present day, like stuff they did in the past kind of being like, hey, coming face to face with them in the present day. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. It's just kind of like, it does make you wonder what this means for Lucy and Wyatt going forward, knowing that, like, Flynn is going off doing what he wants to. Apparently, there's no ramifications if he's able to save his brother's life. But then again, I guess the difference is, though, is that it didn't. I was wondering, I was like, isn't that really big, like, no against the whole timeline thing? But it's like, he didn't to a certain extent, he indirectly affected his own timeline. I mean, because it's like, he kept his half brother alive, so his mom wasn't as sad when her and his dad hooked up and he was born. But, it's like, that's still affecting your life. And it's like, I mean, granted, it makes you wonder how much of Flynn's life has actually changed because of that. I guess for him, it's just like he wanted to do one good thing. It's because he knows what it's like to lose a child, and he didn't want his mom to go through that because he remembered his mom always being super sad about losing his brother Gabriel. So, I mean, what does that mean going forward? Will we see him coming to the present and meeting his brother, the brother he never actually got to know? So that'd be kind of interesting because Gabriel is actually older than Flynn. So, I mean, I don't know. It'd just be kind of interesting to see that all kind of work out, see where, maybe we'll get access to that next episode. I don't know. Because the fact is that Homeland Security is aware of that. Because apparently they've had this file on Flynn the entire time, the unredacted version. They just haven't let anyone see it because the lady's kind of like, yeah, I still shouldn't be letting you see this. But it's kind of like, hey, screw it. You need to know. So. But what I was getting at is, like, I wonder, like, will this push Wyatt and Lucy to be like, well, screw it. He changed stuff for his life. Maybe we should do it too. Or is it just kind of like, does the mission still come first and whatnot? The journal and everything. It's just so many questions. A very good episode. Like I said, it's kind of like things could have been bad. Like I said, I feel like this episode wasn't there wasn't that much of a drastic change in the timeline as compared to previous episodes. So that was just kind of interesting to me that it kind of played out that way. So very interested to see what goes on next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.